Last year, there were approximately 13 million guns sold in the United States. Of that, 5.4 million went to first-time gun buyers. And the year before, 2020, there were approximately 24 million guns sold in the United States, of which 8.4 million went to first-time gun buyers. So if you think about that for a second, almost 14 million people bought a lethal firearm for the first time. They were so afraid for their own safety, the safety of their family, the safety of their community, that they were willing to buy a lethal weapon with all that entails.
So this rise can be attributed partially to some of the things that are going on in the country, but more so on a more visceral level. We're seeing, the fear of victimization throughout the U.S. increase, and this fear is driving this need to protect oneself. So the fear drives the need to protect oneself, that drives them to buy firearms, that introduces more firearms into the ecosystem, into the market, which increases firearm deaths and fatalities. And so it's this kind of self-devolving cycle that's really kind of got us where we're at, currently. The issue is there's a subset of encounters that someone's going to get into in their given lifespan that's going to require something more than de-escalation. But what compounds that problem is that only a very, very small chance of a percentage of those issues can be resolved reasonably with the use of deadly force. That still leaves another subset that needs something more than verbal de-escalation, but that the use of deadly force would be either excessive or criminal or just not required. So how do we fill in that? Some people fight their way out of it, but then others that don't have that ability need a tool or need something else to try to supplement that. The issue that we have with that small subset of deadly force encounters is those that are untrained, those first-time gun buyers, those that don't have that education, and those that haven't had that conversation with themselves, that they are prepared to take somebody's life, turns into hesitancy in a deadly force situation. They pull that gun thinking that that's the solution, that that's going to get them out of this problem, and they realize that they're not prepared to pull the trigger. And that puts them in even greater danger by introducing a lethal weapon into a possibly non-lethal encounter.
For most Americans, they have the option of pepper spray or a baseball bat or frankly a lethal firearm. And there isn't anything in between. Technology has changed sufficiently in the last 10 years that there are now weapons that can effectively stop an assailant at standoff distances of up to 60 feet without the need to use lethal force. And that's really what we're trying to do. So it's important to use technology to bridge that gap between pepper spray or a baseball bat and a lethal firearm, to give people the ability to protect themselves using technology. People ask all the time, what differentiates byrna from other non-lethal options? And the most important thing that differentiates byrna is standoff distance. Distance equals safety. Most of the options available today all involve close quarter combat. These are weapons that are effective only at 5 or 10 feet. And by that time, the situation has gotten way out of control. We wanted something that was effective at distances up to 60 feet, that had multiple shot capability, so that you could stop an assailant before the situation escalated out of control.
So the Byrna SD is a handheld pneumatic 68 caliber launcher. So it utilizes an 8-gram CO2 cartridge. The 8-gram CO2 cartridge sits in the housing right underneath the barrel. The great thing about the SD that kind of differentiates it from a lot of other options out there is once you screw in that 8-gram cartridge, it actually doesn't pierce the cartridge. So now your weapon can sit in a ready state almost indefinitely. You load your 68 caliber rounds into the magazine goes into the weapon, and that's it. It's literally set up and can sit wherever it needs to sit, whether on a shelf, in a cabinet, on a belt, in a bag, in a holster, in a car, wherever it needs to, like I said, almost indefinitely. And all you need to do to activate it when you need it is you draw it, you switch from safe to fire, you pull the trigger. That first trigger pull is going to simultaneously pierce the CO2 cartridge and send that first round. So because the Byrna SD and Byrna line of launchers can be used in so many different situations, now someone doesn't have to wait for that, that perfect scenario where all the stars have to align in order for deadly force to be reasonable. They can engage sooner and engage understanding that there's not the ramifications on the back end. So there's less hesitancy and therefore more confidence in using it. Plus, just using it itself is a lot more confident. Using it's very easy, there's no recoil, there's no loud report, and so actually shooting it itself is so much easier. People understand that, and so they're not so hesitant to just pull the trigger thinking that there's going to be this loud bang and recoil.
When we formed Byrna, our goal was to save lives. And we want to save lives, of course, in all different types of situations: a home invasion, a carjacking, a mugging. And that means the ability to protect themselves by both having the means to fight back, by having the Byrna SD, but also the means to protect yourself with the Byrna shield, with the ability to deploy body armor so that a school resource officer can go in and tend to students or teachers that have been shot. We know that every time somebody uses a Byrna rather than a lethal firearm, we're saving a life. And we know that as we get Byrna more broadly accepted, that it will have an impact on the level of gun violence in America.